Admiral, radar shows that we have liberals approaching at 3 o'clock, and libertarians at 9 o'clock, and conservatives at 6 o'clock. They're coming from every angle, every viewpoint.
Hey, Green Bay, this is Elliot, and this is Political Radar Green Bay. If you're watching on video, hit subscribe, hit the... What are all the buttons? What are all the buttons, Jacob? They got to hit the bell, the subscribe. There's multiple buttons. There are many buttons. All of the buttons below you, you need below me.
Except report as offensive, right? You don't hit that one.
You can hit that too.
Okay.
Hit all of the buttons, yeah. And if you're listening to this, which is better because the face, right? So if you are listening, please like it, please share it, whether it's on Apple Podcasts or all of the places. It's all of the places, right, Jacob? Jacob's ignoring me.
Napster.
Is it? It probably is on Napster.
Hopefully.
Napster. How old are you? Man. Jacob, do you even know what Napster is? Jacob's sleeping.
Doesn't know Sean Fanning. Any of those people. Lars Ulrich in The Battle.
The Metallicops?
Yeah. Dude, I remember I had Kazaa. I had the hacked Kazaa Lite where the government couldn't detect it and all that. Yeah.
Those people are watching. You're going to go to prison now.
I mean, that's why I'm a libertarian in a sense,
And
right? You know, I want free
You're
music.
a libertarian light.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Here today with Eric Drzewiecki, we're going to talk about the Democratic presidential debate. We're going to talk about some school things. We're going to talk about the mayor and some controversy in the Police and Fire Commission. And he's going to explain how he's not a complete Neanderthal. So
Only a little.
next. Only a little. If we're talking about stuff, it's going to spill over into the presidential candidates thing too, I think. So so let's open with that, since that's kind of what we were chatting about in the first place. So what's your take on the Democratic presidential debate that happened? It happened last night as we're recording.
Yeah. Shoot, I have to say, each time I watch these debates, there's usually a way for one more candidate to disqualify themselves in my eyes. And, you know, full disclosure, I went Gary Johnson last election, and I wasn't actually even thrilled with him. But I just felt like, hey, even though I'm right of center, I can't stomach Trump. And yet I feel like Hillary was the left equivalent to Trump, but she'd get away with more because she'd have media cover. So I'm like, I'm just going to vote for third party and hope that I can get them funding to dilute the votes a little bit and dilute the funding. So in these elections, I right away could cross out Bernie and Elizabeth Warren. They were pretty much off the list immediately. It's just because their policy proposals are way, way too far from me.
Well, when Biden's the moderate, it's terrifying to me when he's like, so how are you going to pay for this? Like, even get within, you know, a few trillion of the number, right?
Sure.
How are you going to pay for this? And they totally dodged the question.
Oh, I mean, you could summarize the questions with, are you going to have to raise taxes on the middle class?
Yeah.
And the answer being, I'm not going to answer that part of the question, but I will talk about how good my proposal is.
But their proposals are not good between those two, especially. So the local take on this is Warren and Sanders want a full government takeover of healthcare and health insurance. And I don't know the percentages, but I see the big buildings and I know lots of people, and many of them in Green Bay work for insurance companies.
Oh, yeah.
So when you come to, we are ground zero for the election.
Yep.
And I mean, we're a purple city. We're open-minded, I think. I mean, on average, not everybody is, but I think we all are able to be actually more persuadable than others. But we're ground zero. If you're telling me that you're going to put me out of a job, but I'll have health care, I will probably keep what I have.
And I think it is that simple, right? I work for an insurance company, although it's in the property and casualty area. And we have conversations every day about how our industry would be next, because there's so much that people don't like. Yeah. There's people that have issues with their car insurance or their home insurance. It's expensive. It's going up in cost. It's not sitting stable. And a lot of that is because where's the payouts, right? In bodily injuries, where are people paying out in home insurance, either weather related or getting sued because somebody fell on their sidewalks.
Right.
So that industry is coming next. And you've got a lot of local people that work in that too, with Ameriprise, American Family. There's a lot of Wisconsin insurance companies too.
So
the auto home.
But even if you agree that we should just take the biggest segment of the U.S. economy and make it be run by the same people that brought you the DMV and police brutality and endless war, all of the people who are completely incompetent at running anything, we want them to be in charge. We want Donald Trump to be in charge of our healthcare. You want Donald Trump to be in charge of what doctor you get to see, or if you get to see a doctor? That makes my skin fall off of my body.
Yeah, no, and so
how can anybody be in favor of this?
Well, the left right now objects to calling these things socialist.
It doesn't matter what label
right.
it is.
It doesn't. But if you think about it, right, the left also critiques.
If it's a full takeover, that is the definition of socialism.
But the left critiques the military-industrial complex, which
they wanna
really
turn it
resembles socialism
Well, it does,
because there's
yes.
no competition, full government, and they get their own contracts, they get all of this money, and there's so much waste. So they're like, hey, let's have everything else resemble that non-competition where the government runs it. What could go wrong?
What could go right?
Yeah.
So it's going to become the medical industrial complex.
Yes.
And I said straight out, people in Green Bay work for insurance companies, and somebody on Facebook said, and I apologize, I don't remember who said what, but, well, we're going to still need to administer it. And I'm like, if we're not going to be able to cut any of the costs out and more people are going to be able to go to the doctor, increasing the overall spending, the numbers they're estimating are not even close to what it's actually going to cost.
There's an either or here. Either massive layoffs to keep the costs in check and just deem half or more of that workforce redundant, or costs skyrocket. But you can't avoid both of them. You might be able to avoid one partially, but it's either or. You're not going to be able to maintain all of the employees and yet not have the cost skyrocket. It's just, that's, as Andrew Yang would say, that's math, right?
This is what I keep saying. I'm like, I think he does understand math. He has a different perspective and a different opinion than I do, but he understands math at least.
Yeah.
Like he's not at the bottom of my list on that stage. He's more towards the top than the bottom.
He would be at the top of my list on that stage solely from the perspective of, whose brains do I trust the most to deal with an unforeseen problem that will come up in their presidency?
Right.
And if you ask me that question, Andrew Yang, and there's not even a close second.
Buttigieg is probably second.
Maybe.
For me, I would say.
Maybe him or Amy.
Yeah.
She's pretty bright.
I would say those are probably my top three in the sanity column, and the ability to reason. But really, the three of them, I mean, Yang has a little bit of charisma, but like that's a necessary component to get elected. You got to have some charisma, and even though Bernie sounded like he was like having a cough attack almost on stage,
his Larry David impression was not on. It just was not on. I would have liked to see, and you can't listen. You can say what you want about Bernie. I'd never for a second doubt that he genuinely believes what he says, and I will give him that. I respect somebody if they do that.
Right.
The problem is he has started to not be able to articulate it as well. When Amy can get in a zinger on him that you may have wrote the bill, but I read it, and get those sort of things out there.
I know.
It was actually a very effective attack from, if you will, the centrist element of it.
Right.
And going back to that, I do think that Biden is somewhat centrist.
Yeah.
He would be probably a step to the right of the Obama administration, not a large step.
Right.
But a step to the right.
Yeah.
Now, Obama was not a centrist administration, but he did move the goalposts enough that I think in public perception, it's a lot closer in the eyes of the public.
Wouldn't we all take Obama right now?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure from the perspective of the fact that you can get away with a lot more when you have enough charisma and enough media cover. I think that administrations should time out at 8 years because they start to get worse. The IRS things and all of that started to happen.
True.
There were some really bad things that were going on.
Right.
And in general, the media response at that time is, we don't want to hear any more about these investigations. They're a waste of time. Mm-hmm. That's a different response. I'm glad that the media is adversarial with Trump.
Yeah.
And that helps to weaken the beast.
They're supposed to be.
Right.
Whatever administration it is. That's your job.
But it's not always that way. It's not always that way. And that's on both sides, right? Obviously, if Fox News had the power of the rest of the mainstream media combined, we'd have a bigger problem than we do right now.
Right.
Fortunately, Fox might be the strongest one entity, but they can't take them all on combined.
No.
You know, and that's good.
Right. So since I have you here, I'm probably not going to articulate this properly, but why aren't Republicans attacking this health insurance thing? And I get it, like Trump doesn't have to campaign, right? Like he just gets to show up right now. But like when we hear like Republicans don't have a plan, I mean, we already take care of poor people for the most part between a mix of federal and state things, right? Like we do. I mean,
Sure.
there are lots of programs, too many programs. But so in terms of the health insurance thing, the thing that impacts like what we think of as the middle class, right? You're being charged too much and you don't have the money for the deductibles and all of these things, right? For healthcare.
Sure.
Not for car insurance
Yeah.
or anything, you know, but for healthcare, that is a little bit scary. And I feel like the reason it got out of whack is because it's tied to employers. And so, Bernie and Warren both said nobody loves their insurance company. And I kind of buy that, partly because they're not the customer. So I would like to get it back to capitalism, which we don't have right now in insurance. Right. In health insurance. I think car insurance and other insurance is closer to capitalism, and people have fewer complaints with those things. Health insurance is a disaster precisely because it's not capitalism. And the only way I can see going back to this is the federal government has the most employees in the country of any organization. So if we're going to move the discussion, if we're going to change things, we can change this overnight. But I mean, whatever, make it take 2 years, make it take 10 years. I don't care. But have a policy where government employee, I will pay you exactly the same amount, but you're going to get the cash. And you will have a choice then. We have the plan, the insurance plan that you have. You're going to be allowed to purchase it and have a phase-in period where we're not leaving people in the streets and but where they're making choices about what insurance company they want to go to, and then the insurance companies have to lower their prices, be competitive, be responsive, lower the regulations that keep the competition low.
Sure.
But the thing is, we need to start with, we got to get rid of the employer part of that. I think that's the part that's screwing the whole discussion up. Your job should have nothing to do with your healthcare at all. Your job should have nothing to do with your healthcare. And
at least that shouldn't be mandatory, right? If a job really wanted to.
But that would never happen. You know why it happened? The whole thing, and I say this a lot, but the whole health insurance, because as an employment thing, that started in World War II. Because guess what? The government said, well, we got to put salary caps on individuals. Like all this tinkering and meddling in capitalism, there are unintended consequences. We destroyed healthcare in America. If you perceive it as being bad, which most of us think it could be fixed somehow in some fashion, right? So it's sort of broken. That's what broke it. It's not capitalism that broke it. Capitalism did not break it. Capitalism didn't say, I'm going to charge you extra. Capitalism doesn't do that.
Right.
If Apple's selling an iPhone and they're making 50% profit on it, guess what? Samsung's like, I want some of that 50% profit. That's how it works, right? This is not complicated. People used to learn this in school.
Maybe capitalism needs some rebranding now. Maybe it does. Maybe you just need to say,
we need to rename
we
it
need
socialism, American socialism.
No, maybe you're just saying we need competition.
Yes.
Because people understand competition makes things better. People hate when there's no parity in a sport, right? When Alabama and Clemson are at the top all the time, people get a little bit annoyed with college football, or people get sick of the Patriots, right? Competition is a good rebranding, because if there's competition, the market is exercising. It's becoming more efficient.
Yeah.
And when there's no competition, well, we know what happens with that. And you can see that with mergers that probably shouldn't happen sometimes, because then all of a sudden they're able to just eliminate competition. You want more businesses, not less. You want less barriers to entry. And hey, let's segue. That's where I can say, hey, for the most part, a lot of deregulation that has occurred in the Trump administration, 2 thumbs up.
I know.
Not all of it.
Nope.
There are some parts of it that, I'm not okay with, but
And if I had to take the deregulation with the tariffs, I'd probably be like, I don't know.
But some people can't see beyond the tweet, and they just think that everything that's going on is bad.
I know.
And the first thing I think is if you have somebody like a Bernie or Elizabeth that comes in and right away the first thing to do is say, we're actually going to bring back all of those deregulated areas. We're going to re-regulate them.
I know.
And we're going to do more.
I know.
What happens? I'll tell you what happens. The economy tanks because investors love them some deregulation.
Sure they do.
And
but they also like certainty, this flip-flopping back and forth. Like how does a business plan? Like, I mean, even a small business, but big businesses too, where the stakes are higher. How do you plan?
That's been a Republican problem for a while because there are a lot of competing ideas within the Republican Party on the economy, and Republicans seem to want to try them all. And that's not healthy. I mean, you look at Ted Cruz with ethanol subsidies, programs that had already been guaranteed to farmers. He said, we're just going to cancel them in the middle and you're screwed. Well, that's a problem because, again, if businesses have plans, farmers who are especially in a vulnerable area, when that was a Ted Cruz proposal, they're just going to cancel it after you've already probably built your farm.
And you can't do that. And that's where I'm saying, like, even in I have this idea for federal employees, you're gonna go buy your own insurance or your own healthcare or not.
Sure.
Maybe you just want to take that $30,000 and put it in the bank. It's your money.
I mean, that's the ultimate anti-ACA, right?
Right.
Go back to buy or not.
Right.
But then maybe put in some things that says, if you don't.
Right. So we can ease into it.
Right.
So have a little bit of stability in the whole situation. I get that. I'm becoming a grown up eventually, right? I get that we can't just.
No, you're not.
I'm trying to. I'm learning from my what's the term? I don't know. Sensei. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Yes.
Okay. So, and this is so one of the things that I think like conservative minded people have an issue with where things have kind of been at odds with in terms of schools, which I'd like to go to next. So one of the things with schools is insurance, right?
Yep.
Because you know what, if you get rid of that insurance where like the Cadillac insurance that teachers have, and hey, I'm at UWGB, the insurance is good, man. I'm not gonna lie, it's really good. That's why Gina makes me stay there.
Well, so what do you do though, right? Because that's one of the perks.
Well, and so that's the thing. So there's this dirty little undercurrent in the Democratic Party. It's like, well, unions fought for these things, and now you want to take them away. So what did I get out of my union? I gave up things so that I could have this insurance, and now you're going to give it to everybody. So there's some. It's not a black and white thing even there, but I think like to me, removing it from your employer would bring us together for schools. And because that's the main point of contention. I don't think that people think legitimately that, boy, we're really overpaying teachers. But when you look at the total compensation, it's pretty high.
Sure.
And I think if we got a little bit back to that, I think that we would have we'd have less friction in so many areas of life that matter. Schools matter to me a lot.
They do. And I think there is another element to, sadly, just the political left-right demographics that make up who the educators are for the most part. Let's not pretend that they resemble the political breakdown of the country.
I think that would shift that.
Right. But I think that is also an element, right? You know, when we see debates on Facebook or just in politics in general, Republicans tend to say that Democrats are overpaid, and Democrats tend to say Republicans are overpaid. And it ends up being this issue where the reality is there's that political malaise that's covering it all. And so I agree, you know, if we can do a few things that really just put towards let's have the numbers be transparent. So the compensation is transparent, which means people can just make their regular Joe observations on is this fair or not.
Right.
Because you can have competing narratives and it's easy to sell a half stats program that just says, hey, we're not going to count the insurance, and now look, teachers are underpaid.
I know.
Let's not count the benefits.
Right.
And then you'll have the other people that really overemphasize all the benefits.
That's what I mean.
And not count really the fact, well, there's benefits in the rest of the public sector.
Yes.
And so you'll compare like my take-home pay
Yeah.
to the, so yeah, it gets us back to even numbers against even numbers,
Yeah.
which helps get rid of that distortion, because that's
we
what
can start
politicians are
agreeing on
good at.
things, and we can start attacking the things that matter instead of attacking teachers. We have kick-ass teachers in Green Bay. We really, truly do. And, I'm the first one to criticize the budget and the number of administrators we have, and it's questionable as to what they're actually doing. But the teachers are really, on average, excellent. Yeah. On average, they're excellent. And of course, you have outliers. You have outliers in anything,
Oh, for sure.
People you work with, people, there's always like the slacker, whatever, right? But they're really pretty good. And they're in it for the right reasons, but they're also just professionals and really good at it.
Well, and the reality is, even with those outliers, right, we are in largely a negative society as far as you remember negatives.
That's true.
So sometimes
That's true.
You have the one bad teacher in high school, or maybe 2 or 3. That was what? 2 or 3 out of the 50, 60 teachers you had.
But you remember
But
those,
you
yeah.
really remember those bad teachers.
You're right.
Most people know a teacher who said something that was sexually harassing. Most people know a teacher that said something at some point.
But you know what? When you spend 1 hour a day, 180 hours a year, I will say something sexually harassing to you within 30 minutes.
You probably did in the parking lot, But the reality is, remember, that stays, right? So then there's this perception.
Yes.
And then if people perceive the teachers union as supporting keeping those people, you can get this very, very different, it's us versus them mentality. Now,
I want to get away from that.
Yeah. And I think that's important, because you have teachers that will go in the class. I remember these news stories about teachers that are like, if you like Scott Walker, then you're an enemy of our school, things like that. And hey, listen, I was kind of lukewarm on Scott Walker. Some stuff I liked, some stuff I didn't.
Yep.
And I think probably you were similar.
Yes.
And yet, if you create that environment, that creates distrust between people, and they generalize all teachers to be like that. And we definitely need to get away from that, for sure.
Yeah. So there were a couple things that they talked about. I didn't attend the school board meeting. There was tons of things going on. It's the beginning of the school year for me, so
Sure.
I wish I could. I wish I could make it to all these things. I need some kind of a time morphing bubble to give me more time. But I guess that there were a couple things they talked about.
There were.
So, all right, go ahead.
So the school board talked about and voted unanimously to ban Native American mascots. Mm-hmm. And my first thought was, I'm glad that we've solved all of the rest of the problems that are plaguing the Green Bay schools to where we can ban something that's not occurring. Yeah. Apparently, we probably should ban heroin in the water fountains, because, that'll also have an effect on just as many students. Yeah. Now, there's a lot of talk about the psychology of it, right?
Sure.
And people will use these anecdotal testimonies to suggest, hey, these 10 people came and they said that these things hurt their feelings.
Yes.
But whenever the raw numbers have ever been analyzed, we're generally talking something like between 70-30 and 90-10. When you take a poll of Native American populations that say they don't care.
Because no matter what you're doing, the name of some sports team is the least of my problems.
Right.
I mean, you could be a recovering alcoholic and be offended by the name of the Brewers, right?
Sure.
But we're not talking about that.
Well, and that's a tough one. Like, I'd step away from the whole Brewers or Fighting Irish if you grew up or you watched the games in New York and it traumatized you or whatever, right? But the reality is that I'm all about choice. And I don't like being paternalistic and saying, no, this is bad for you, therefore you cannot do it. Because honestly, that's no different than banning cigarettes outright, period. Because you could say, is that the truth, right? Would we actually be better health-wise if there were no cigarettes? Sure. Mm-hmm. But we don't want a society that is so paternalistic that they tell us what we can and cannot handle. And so that's my issue. Do I really care? Like I said, I don't care enough about this to go there and spend my time to say, I'm going to waste an hour or two of my time to make sure you do not waste yours.
I know.
But it is a little disheartening that this was a priority.
Yeah. And so that segues into something that actually is a priority that, okay, this is going to drive me crazy. I don't know if you were part of that Facebook discussion about it or not, but I think Rhonda put out a thing saying that they're gonna get a report on class sizes in the Green Bay schools. I'm like, a report? You guys all have laptops in your, like, what is it that is in the laptop? Sure. What if this was a business, if your core product, if you can't get me a report in about 10 seconds about the major statistics about our product, there's a problem. What are those administrators doing if they cannot produce a report of class sizes during the school board meeting?
Well, and I think that's an area where our school board has continued to need more and more challenging, because for the large part, I think it has been what the administrators say versus what the people that want to shake things up say. And
I'm not blaming the school board.
No.
And not just because we know people that are on the school board and I can disagree with them on things, but like, this is an administration problem.
This is an institutional issue
and you can say, well, that's the responsibility of the school board to hold them to the fire. Fine. But I mean, if the administration says, well, we can get you that report next month, and you're like, okay, like, what are you supposed to do about it at that point, right? Like, it becomes this hard thing. Like, I would fire them on the spot, but
well, no, and I think that if you get response like that indicates that their ability to have data and analyze data is severely lacking.
Well, it makes me feel like they want to do something to the data.
Sure. No,
and I shouldn't be able to think that. Don't just be transparent. Pull it up.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I work in an insurance company. If we were to say, we want to know how many policies you have in force in Texas.
Yeah.
And our underwriters or actuaries said, give us a week, we would be shocked. I would say,
how about an hour?
Or, if they said, we'll get it to you at the end of business, I'd deal with that, you know? But if it's when the turnarounds are concerning, and that suggests one of two things: either our ability to take and analyze data is absolutely Stone Age, or the books are being cooked. Now,
or they're incompetent.
Yes. And I think that goes to the first.
And I think that's all three. Well, so we invest a lot of money in IT in the school district. I don't know what they're doing with it. I truly don't. And everybody makes fun of me because I'm volunteering at Preble, and I'm like, I had to bring my own HDMI cable to hook up to the projector so that I could, teach the class. I had to literally bring my own HDMI cable.
How do they not have extras? Like, when you go to this place, they have monitor cables just stuffed in a closet somewhere, the whole closet full.
There probably is in the school somewhere, but there's so much bureaucracy. And part of it is maybe the school is too big. Maybe we shouldn't have schools that have 2,200 students. Okay. But we do. And there's too much bureaucracy. There's too much, there's not that many things going on ultimately. And if there are, maybe there shouldn't be. And so anyway, I'm getting off topic, but there's 13 students in that class. And they're talking about class sizes, and I get it. They're probably talking about first grade. I'm talking about seniors in high school. Sure. But okay, we can't make a blanket statement either. We can't say, well, there should only be 20 students per class, right?
Not all classes are created equal.
Do you have a take on any of that stuff?
Well, I do think that, number one, the data should be easily accessible. So I agree with you there. Not all classes are created equal. There's a lot of even in college, there are classes where if it was a survey class and the whole theater was full, it was not a big deal.
Right.
But there were also classes that if you were talking like a 450 level environmental science, where you're talking about UN things and nitrogen fixation, and things like that on soybeans, you probably want a smaller size because you're getting into deep detail. And so not all
I'm
classes...
fundamentally teaching the same class at Preble as I am at GB. They're
sure.
Slightly different topics and everything, but fundamentally the same level, the same. There's literally 2 high school students, one in each of my sessions, so the same age. So these are classes of 30, and at Preble we have 13, and so I'm not being critical of the teacher. He's great, but he could handle more students.
Yeah.
And he's right there with me. He's like, how can we get more students? But so I'm worried about even the discussion if they can cook the books.
Oh, and I'd like to know the numbers on an itemized basis.
That's
not
right.
just this is the average class size
Yeah.
for first grade, second grade. Because if you've got Jim throwing off the numbers, right? Well, that doesn't really bode well because you're gonna like want to know, hey, what does advanced math look like?
Yes.
You know, you don't want your college credit calc class to have 40 students for a high school teacher. Probably.
Right.
That would be pretty intensive.
Well, probably any of the math classes.
Right.
Unless you can just peel off the most advanced students, the 40 top students in the district, and maybe they're self-learners. You know?
Because we want to be data driven.
Yes.
But you need to have data in a way that's useful. And so if it's way too much of an overhead view, then you're probably just trying to push a narrative that says we need more money.
And I mean, and that's ultimately what the deal is, right? And they blame, and right away the knee jerk of people that tend to be on the left. I'm assuming they're on the left. I mean, it's like, well, it's budget, and I'm like, I don't know, is it budget? Because there's a lot of administration there. We could probably and most of the administrators have education background. So guess what? You know, if we have class size problems, yeah, guess you're gonna have to teach a class or two this semester, huh? Like we're getting all these overqualified people, and we got to pay them these lofty budgets. You know, maybe they got to take a class.
Well, and that should actually, they should anyway.
I think they should anyway. That's
because
what I was gonna say.
if you're like, okay, so with my job, right? Like I'll take escalated calls that are like so difficult that supervisors can't handle them.
Yeah.
Now, I also take some frontline calls because that way I have a pulse of how our customers are doing. If you're an administrator with an education background, you should be teaching a class here and there because you know what?
Yes.
If you haven't noticed, the students today are a lot different than when you or I are students. And if you're still administrating as if the students are roughly the same as then, you're getting way behind. So staying in that cycle is really important to get a better ground level view. And I think they would relate to teachers better. And at the end of the day, I really do appreciate some of the things that Rhonda and Christina say where they're really looking at.
That's why I hated
level.
giving Christina a hard time about the Indian mascot thing.
Yes.
Because I'm like, dude, do not let this be a barrier because I agree with her on everything else.
Yeah. But I think it's important that people that we have a good rapport with, that we agree with, that we can share those things. And I think that overall they've been pretty good. Every once in a while, I get a little concerned that just says, well, that's because you're a white male. And that stuff I think could go away. And I don't think we really need all of that in the discussion because at the end of the day, I don't care what the demographics are of the person I'm communicating with. It's a thought, it's ideas. I want to be talking ideas with somebody else.
Yeah.
And if it's a good idea that came from somebody of some background, or if it's a bad idea, it's the idea that matters here. And so we don't want that dismissiveness to come in because we've had a society that was like that before, that dismissed ideas because of who they were coming from. We have an administration today that is doing that.
Yeah.
And yes, they're doing it to different people that are in different positions, but it's ugly no matter where it comes from because it tells somebody what you think doesn't matter because of who you are. And that is always wrong to have that position.
So last thing at schools, then we'll talk about the mayor, and then we're going to get out of here and go play some board games.
Yeah.
For the superintendent, but I've been critical of her because I can't really see anything to be not critical about. But I would say I would like to see someone from Green Bay have that job. I would like to have somebody from the community, in the community, take that job. And I know that kind of dovetails into the commission thing with the mayor, right? But
So you're saying that Vanya should be?
well, you know what? Can Vanya be the superintendent of schools? That would be great.
I don't know if
I'll make Vanya move across the street if that's what it takes. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
You think Garrett could rent a house to him for $1?
somebody
just
could.
kidding.
We can make some crony stuff happen, right? But seriously though, we have a city of 110,000 people. Why can't we find somebody that lives here that is invested?
Well, there are some administrators that are doing an excellent job that maybe you could say this administrator is the diamond in the rough, right? There are.
Okay.
And so maybe you say this is the one that's ready for a step up, somebody that's actually been fighting.
Well, that's the other thing. Why aren't we promoting from within at the very least? Every other organization does this, and when they don't, it's the anomaly.
Right.
Apple didn't go do some CEO search. They promoted from within.
And maybe so it really comes down to we've got, for the most part, a 4-3 majority that is administration friendly on the school board. Mostly. Sometimes 5-2, sometimes it's 4-3 the other way. But when you look at it, that's kind of how it breaks down. So the difficulty would be,
I would characterize it, because I want to be in the administration friendly. I want to be just anti-incompetence. So are you saying that we have 4 out of 3 that are incompetence accepting?
I would say they are more of we will approve what we are told is the right way to do it. And that's because we consider the administration to be the experts. Whether or not they are every time, we just defer to them. So maybe we'd say 4 are deferential to a very high level. And these are good people. Like sometimes we get caught in that malaise, right?
I have talked to all of them. I like all of them. I agree with them to varying degrees. But even when I disagree, I had Brenda Warren on. I thought we had a good conversation.
Sure.
And there are certainly things that I don't agree with her. There's certainly things she's not going to agree with me on. She probably thinks I'm a crazy, radical, and that's okay.
Because you are, right?
Well, in a lot of ways I am, right? But reasonable people can disagree. But you need to have the debate. You need to have the discussion. And that's how the truth comes out. So, and I feel like that's not happening all the time.
Almost. So they talked about like having this facilitator, right?
Yeah.
I laughed at the idea at first, but sometimes when I've observed how one side reacts to the criticisms of the other side,
like a marriage counselor kind of deal.
Yeah, you've got this whole concept of, if you're criticizing the way we've done it, you're criticizing us as people.
Right.
And the reality is, I think the critiques that come from, if you will, the new wave on the school board are not saying what you're doing is wrong and it's always been wrong. It is, what you were doing was good. It was very good. It doesn't work as well now. And that doesn't mean it wasn't great for its time. We want ideas that are better for the now, because the ideas that always worked might be able to get us by, but we'll be surviving instead of thriving. And sometimes it takes communicating it like that, right? We're very used to just being meme communicators. And so, and I'm not accusing Rhonda or Christina or anything, but sometimes that happens. It happens with me. I'm guilty of it.
All of us are.
We just
Everyone.
Put it out there like that, and then what happens? Like, what is a Brenda going to take if you're putting it out there like that, right? And then you say, all right, we need a facilitator because we can't even really.
But on the other hand, you hit a point where your frustration level causes that. The reason that I'm gonna scream from the hilltops about the socialists is because I feel powerless about that. I feel like my views aren't being listened to. So that happens, and then you all you can do is take pot shots and make fun of the other side.
I mean, that's really why you've got the people that believe that either Nancy Pelosi or Trump are actually Lucifer himself, right? Because they're frustrated. If you're following Congress and you're frustrated that Republican ideas aren't getting through, Nancy Pelosi is the devil. And if you're what people say, you have the Trump derangement syndrome or whatever, it's Donald Trump that's the devil. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of either of these individuals, but they're not the devil. If they were on the ballot against Satan or Hitler or whoever, I'm pretty sure that I'm voting for Nancy over Satan, voting for Trump over Hitler. It's going to come to that, even if Satan has excellent stats and can cast excellent spells, he's not who I want on my Dungeons and Dragons team because he is going to go chaotic.
You went full nerd on that.
God, you said we're going to do board games, so
Okay, so anything else on schools?
No, I think that overall, though, I would like to see another fresh face the next time we've got things going through, for another fresh blood on the board. I think that getting 1 or 2 new people on each time is a good thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the people they're replacing are bad people, but in everything, turnover is good because it brings new ideas. I don't want to see every incumbent lose because I think that would also bring a lack of stability where you don't want it to be anti-deferential, that everything the administrators propose is shot down, right? There is a scenario where the analysts could have done a good job and maybe some people would have still been against it. We can imagine that, and we don't want that either.
No.
So,
all right, last topic. We saw the thing that Vanya posted last night.
Right.
I think it was last night, right?
So Vanya got correspondence where he was asked by somebody.
And I guess I shouldn't be so loose, like so vague with the names, like we're all buddies. Vanya Kepke, right?
Yes.
Sorry, can't pronounce anything.
He was asked to resign his post on the Police and Fire Commission.
Yeah.
And the reasoning was given that he doesn't live in the district. And obviously, I've known Vanya since he was a candidate.
Right.
I have a positive opinion of him as a guy. I may have jokingly told him, Vanya, if you had loved your mayor as much as you love Trump, perhaps this would have been sent to you. But at the same time, I feel like when you look at the fact that there are a few other people that are appointed to commissions that are not residents, that were appointed by the current mayor, you get an impression that maybe this has a little bit of, you're not on my team.
So I was not aware of that.
Yeah, so we have somebody that's, I don't have the names off the top of my head, but we have somebody that's on the transit and somebody that's on an arts commission that are both in De Pere. Now, you can make the case that transit relates to De Pere. And you can make a much thinner case that because there's Arch Street, arts relates to, but
okay,
you can make these cases. But I
can make the case of any of these,
yes,
because sometimes if there's emergencies, fire and police departments have to go into surrounding communities.
Right. And it's not like Vanya lives in Pulaski.
No.
Right? He lives in Hobart.
Right. He said he lives, what, like 3 blocks away or something?
Right. He lives like 1 block further away from Green Bay than Jason Jerry.
Okay.
You know, like that sort of level where, you know, you can say, all right, you don't live here. Yeah. But that's really, to me, I don't feel that that is sincere. Now, this is Vanya's side of the story. I'd really like to see the rest of it out there. You know, if Vanya's sending emails that are memes of Trump, then, you know, okay, maybe they tried to just give a nice reason versus that. I don't really take Vanya to be a troll, so I don't think he's, you know, that's the sort of
That is not the sort of post I would have ever expected from him.
No.
At all. Like, even if this was the thing that happened, I would have just expected him to take it.
Yeah, I mean, and you can
he would have resigned if he was asked to resign. Like, that just sounds like a Vanya thing to do. Like, okay, well, this is how it is, and I'm just going to move on. And good on him for, like, shining some light on it.
Yeah, I mean, and if you've known Vanya for a while, he's had some tough personal circumstances where the Facebook posts he's made about those have generally tended to be very classy. They've been very moderated.
That was classy too.
Yeah,
like there's nothing really.
Right.
Wasn't calling anybody else out.
But that's why I don't think he's trying to drama monger over this.
No.
I think that some people that are maybe a little bit overly friendly on Team Genrich want to right away accuse him of that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case. I think that what you have right now is sadly the natural result of a hyper-partisan in a non-partisan position. And I don't think it would have been any better with Buckley, and it would have been different people getting those emails. So just don't take me the wrong way. I was on Team Evans, but it's mainly because I felt like he would be much less partisan than the next 2 most likely candidates. So
you're not wrong.
So I think at this point, this is the bed we've made, and the question is going to be: are we going to get an open answer from the administration? I'm open-minded to hear what they say, and maybe there's resignation requests in for those other people. That they said, hey, listen, I know I appointed you recently, but we're actually going to, and if there is, then I have to say, all right, well, that changes my perspective entirely.
Me too, because the consistency and transparency, I think that that's really a reasonable expectation of citizens, of their mayor, of their their president, whatever level of government you want to talk about, but especially locally.
Well, I think we've come far along enough that expecting transparency from government is kind of like expecting good food at a fast food drive-through. Not because you shouldn't expect it, but because we have tolerated the absence of it for long enough that to get it back is going to take a lot of work.
It's funny you say that though, because like fast food has gotten significantly better over the last 30 years. And it's this situation has gotten worse.
It has.
It's not good. The hyper partisanship in a local level now, that's too much. That is not something the average person wants here. We don't want that. Part of the reason I feel like Green Bay and communities like that in Michigan, Minnesota, all the swing states, right? Or the whole Rust Belt maybe, right? I think it's because of that, because we have to work with people on all sides. We're all used to this. We have to be.
Right.
We can't just lose our minds whenever a far left person walks in the room or a far right person walks in the room. We have to get along with them and find common ground. And so this hyper partisanship creeping into our city government, that's not cool. It's just straight up bad.
And if you follow city council members, you see endless memes from people that are on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And it sadly, a significant portion of our city council they're not just the far left or the far right, but I have a problem with if you are meme posting left or meme posting right, where that makes up a majority of your Facebook activity. And I don't know if it's the Facebook thing, but that is indicative of your ability to work with other people because it says what you think of people who don't agree with you. And I had to grow out of that. I mean, shoot, I'll tell you a brief story. And I admit this story freely because I want people to know where I came from. It does not reflect well on me. But in college, we had a debate class. It was part of my political science degree.
Yeah.
There was a girl that went up to the front of the class, and she had to give two positions that she felt strongly about. And I had to or other people in the class had to come up with attacks, and they had to defend it, right?
Yep.
So this girl goes up there, and she says her number one issue is that she's pro-life. Because pro-choice,
Yep.
because of a woman's right to choose and all these, her body, her choice. And then she also says her number two issue is that she's vegan because she believes that it is murder to eat animals. And so I've got a question ready, and I've got my hand ready to go up. And as soon as the question comes out, I ask her, "Would you eat a fetus?" And that's a terrible thing. I should have never asked a question like that. It's not actually productive to the debate.
No. Right.
It was a terrible thing to do. And you know what? That girl was my friend. We never spoke again, ever, in college. She wouldn't even acknowledge me, and she shouldn't have. That was a total jerk move for me to make.
Right.
But we've become like that.
Yeah.
We've become like college me, where we want to score
Across
those
the board.
points and say that everybody that we disagree with are idiots.
Yeah.
And it's very counterproductive. When you have people on the council that want to say the mayor's an idiot or a degenerate or whatever you have, how are you going to then come to the table and solve problems with them? You're automatically skeptical of everything they do. And when you have a crisis and you need to come together and solve things, if 9/11 were to happen today, do you think our senators would be saying the Pledge of Allegiance on the steps together? I don't think they would. If we had the same things happen to us today that happened, 18 years ago, I don't know if we as a country would be able to come together. We would right away be saying Trump planned this or Nancy planned this. It would be right away that meme culture would take over. So again, on a local level, that's really important because you can start to see, usually we're a little insulated from that. It affects us last, but it is seeping in now.
But there's so little transparency. I can't tell you. I mean, the number of times that we've reached out to him to come on here and defend himself a little bit.
Sure.
So that, so there again, like I say, like sometimes the meme culture is kind of pushed on you. If there's no transparency and there's no communication, you feel not listened to, you feel ignored. It becomes a little bit hard to, not understand that.
Well, and it's a snowball effect, right? Because of meme culture, because of a lack of transparency, then people in the roles assume that if they do put themselves out there, the aim is a gotcha moment.
Right.
And so then that just snowballs into, I'm going to be less transparent because these people.
That's what's going to end up happening. But things are going to build up to a point where, okay, I got to address something, right?
Right.
And then it'll be sort of too late.
But anybody that knows you knows, like, if you're going to have a guest that's of an opposite opinion, you're not going to be sitting here for a gotcha moment.
No, I'm more likely to give you a gotcha moment.
Right. And if they slipped up and possibly said something in a conversation that they didn't want to say, you'd probably let them edit it out.
We always let people edit.
And that's the reality.
Nobody's ever taken us up on that, but we would always let them. If they said something they don't intend to say,
I would probably be like, all right, you could touch up my face a little bit.
No, that we're not going to do.
Yeah. Don't make
it radical.
Don't make me
transparency.
Pepe though.
So, any closing thoughts on any of this?
Well, I think that number one would be the spring elections are not that far away already. Sadly, this time around, we're probably not going to have much of spring elections. And that is another example of why partisanship is.
We're not going to have much?
No.
Why do you say that?
Well, when are they synced up with? They're synced up with the Democrat presidential primary.
Oh, okay.
So that means our local elections are going to have who at the polls.
You think they're going to skew to the left?
Well, do you know why that happened, though, right? This is the two-edged sword of partisanship.
Yeah.
Republicans thought there was no way Trump was going to win.
Yeah.
So they changed the 2020 spring elections because they figured it would be a Republican presidential primary. And they figured, hey, we're going to take over all of the local elections. And then when Trump screwed up and won, Republicans had an oh crap moment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he didn't win in Green Bay most likely, but he didn't win in Wisconsin. I mean, Ted Cruz beat him out in the primary.
He did.
That's saying a lot because for me to go to a poll.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, you touched on that. The Cruz interview, the dialogue with Alyssa Milano.
It was great.
I watched that.
I don't know what other people had to say about it, but that was great.
I watched that and I walked away thinking, with the backdrop of who we have as president, Ted Cruz seemed presidential.
Right?
By comparison, that's a scary thought to think that an actual real-life vampire could come across presidential. A vampire whose dad shot Kennedy could be presidential. That's where we've come. And that's I would say I'm not never Trump. I am rarely Trump. Some people say there's sometimes Trump or always Trump. I'd say I'm rarely or less than half the time Trump.
I hate to say that he's been not as bad as I thought. But I actually thought he would be worse.
Would we still have a country if he was as bad as he thought?
No, we wouldn't.
Yes. So and the fact that we still do, I think that Trump has made good money on exceeding expectations. And he's done that by creating the lowest expectations possible.
Maybe.
So there is something to that. I always, I felt like that worked well for me. Whenever I'd go on a date, I would generally, say, all right, I do a lot of gaming. I tell the girl that. And then at the end of the day, they're like, wow, you weren't a complete Neanderthal. I'm like, I know, only partially.
Oh my gosh. Wow. So that's, I think that'll wrap it up. We're going to close out on you being a Neanderthal.
Yeah, it works. It's +3 strength.
So please hit us up on Facebook. We have a great discussion on the Political Radar community. There's a blind partisan community. You can drop into there, and Eric is really active in discussions online in there and elsewhere. So hunt him down, hunt me down, and tell us how wrong we are, and let's keep the dialogue going, no matter where you are politically. Let's come together, Jacob, and Jacob, our resident socialist, and hit the bell, hit the subscribe, and get this out before the Vikings game. Go Pack, go!
Thanks for listening to Political Radar. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. To stay up to date, visit politicalradar.com or connect with us on Facebook or Twitter.